Hi, this is Dennis Dempsey. You are listening to the Faith in Humanity podcast. Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of the Faith in Humanity podcast. On this episode, Mike and I talk about the afterlife. On the previous episode, introducing Mike, which if you haven't listened to it, please go back and listen to it. Mike Harr is my cousin, and he'll be helping me out with this podcast, so you may hear him on interviews. He'll be doing stuff behind the scenes, and you'll certainly hear him on episodes like this, where him and I take a topic and run with it, or topics and run with it. In this case, it's just one topic, because in the last episode, I briefly touched upon the idea of the afterlife. I mean, it was one sentence I said about the afterlife, and we thought that it'd be a good idea to maybe have a discussion about the afterlife and what we thought. We didn't have time in the last episode to hit on the afterlife. As you can see, this episode is an hour and a half long, so we had a lot to talk about. Although we did have some tangents and go off the rails a little bit here and there, which I think is okay, and I think that this episode is fantastic. I really enjoyed every second of it. I think there's value in every bit of it. So I'm very proud to be releasing this. I'm really excited for you all to hear it. But before we jump into the episode, I just want to quickly get the announcements out of the way up front. First, there is a curse word towards the very end of this episode, so I just want you all to be aware of that. If you're listening to it with little kids around, you may want to hold off or just put headphones in. You can follow us on Twitter at TFIH_podcast. You can find us on Facebook and YouTube by searching the Faith in Humanity podcast. You can email us at tfih.podcast@gmail.com. We love to hear from you guys, and we love to get feedback. And finally, if you have a second of your time, could you just go onto Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play, wherever you get your podcasts, and give us a rating, a good rating, ideally a good rating. We would really appreciate that. All right, I hope you all enjoy the show. All right, Mike, we're back here again to have a discussion because part of the podcast is going to be us dissecting and digesting the discussions that we have with guests. And now it's going to be maybe a little bit of us continuing the discussion that we had before, and also kind of dissecting and digesting the discussion that we had before. So there may be some new things, new topics brought up, but then also topics that we wanted to expand on from the last episode. It's pretty much what we're doing today, right? That's kind of what the objective is of this discussion.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
All right, sweet. So, I'm excited to jump into it. I know that I have a few things written down, and this may be, I feel like this is going to be like an ongoing process where we're just going to have a continual, never-ending list of things that we want to talk about, just building from the discussions that we have together, the discussions with the guests. So I feel like I have a bunch of stuff written down. I know you have a bunch of stuff written down. So we probably won't get to everything, and that's okay, because a lot of these topics are general things that we can just have discussions about at any time, which I think is something that I want to incorporate into the podcast. It's just like us just having a discussion, maybe not even in reference to anything that we did previously, but just, a whole brand new, just kind of topic discussion, just run with it, one night or whatever. I think that'd be a good time. But, so the last time I came up with the questions to ask you, because it was kind of, we had the premises that I was going to be the one interviewing you, but now, I believe that you have, 5 or 6 things that you have written down. So, if you want, we'll kind of flip it now, and you'll be the one kind of asking the questions, and I'll be responding and asking you questions, of course. But let's knock out some of your list now.
Well, the one thing that we didn't get to on the first one was just the idea of the afterlife.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. I mentioned it quickly. I believe towards the end of the episode, I kind of threw it in there. I was like, "Oh, the afterlife. Oh, yeah, we'll talk about that some other time. It's too big of a topic to discuss."
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So, yeah. Let's let's talk about the afterlife. What do So I kind of want you to go first on it. We've had discussions before about this, specifically at the last soup party, about this. And so I know that you have a lot to say about it, where I feel like because I'm still going through this journey, I really don't know if I have any firm beliefs or firm theories just yet on what I think the afterlife is like, to be honest. Or I really have no I really have no idea whether it's heaven, where or you just kind of live in a void of feeling of, there are a lot of near death experiences where people say that they just get engulfed by this sense of love and peace when they are about to transition to the afterlife, and then they get pulled back and everything. It's almost like a depressing thing to be pulled back to this world. So I don't know if it's just you're existing in the void and you're just kind of like a floating, I don't know, floating cloud of emotion, of positive emotion, or like the Christians believe that you're going to have a new body. I mean, they truly believe you're going to have a new body and there's going to be a new earth. I don't know if other religions have those beliefs, but what do you think? What do you think is on the other side?
Well, what do you recall anything that I was saying that last time that we had spoke at all? Like, is there any key points that pop out to you, or
about the afterlife?
Right. I don't really remember talking about too much. I mean, I definitely have some stuff that I could go, just as far as my thoughts on it, but I don't know if you remember any key, like I said, bullet points or what have you in regards to the conversation we did have.
No, I don't think we touched on the afterlife at all. I'm trying to remember the context in which I even mentioned the word the afterlife. I think it was just like part of me building on like another point, or trying to make a strong, like make my other point stronger, but not. I don't think we even like discussed our theories or your thoughts on the afterlife at all. I think this is
you're talking about the last podcast.
Yeah, the last episode. Yep.
No, we didn't. But I was saying you brought up the conversation we were having back in March.
Right. Okay. Yes. Yeah, I remember you talking about. Well, I'm trying to remember if that was before or after I talked to Steve, the astrologer. I think it might have been after I talked to him. Or maybe I was in the process of talking to him. I was kind of unpacking his theories, because it was usually when I talk to a guest, I have a preliminary interview where we kind of lay down some like basic kind of like, okay, this is what you're thinking, kind of getting a feel for each other. And maybe I talked to you a little bit about kind of his idea of potential like reincarnation and choosing the life that you want to like being able to choose like when you come back, you're able to choose the life that you come back in order to learn something in this world to bring it back to the afterlife. And I thought that you kind of related with that, and like with your pull towards astrology, it kind of like you felt like that made sense to you.
Yeah. Like I was saying that back in March, like I definitely have been just delving more and more into astrological readings and stuff. Just as far as not necessarily reading like which I have looked into, kind of reading my birth chart and anybody else's birth chart who I can just think of their birthday and birth time and everything. But I mean, so I have done a little bit of that type of reading, but also just reading in regards to astrology in a general sense. But that was, I mean, the one thing that interested me in regards to we'll get to the afterlife, but just since you brought up Steve and that conversation, the one thing that really, which is actually, even as of yesterday, it's like a very new interest of mine, is like the idea of, fate versus free will. And I don't know, for the recent few years, I guess, just with any philosophy I've been reading, or just developing my own stance on things. Um, I always just looked at the universe and existence as just this grand design, uh, designed by God, or the Creator. Even that word, I don't that word is I feel is iffy. Like I said, just how, because I don't really want to say it in a religious sense, but in a spiritual sense, we can just use the word God because it's familiar, and but just the Creator, the all-encompassing, the ever penetrating entity, if you will, that has designed and then also is in everything. Um, I just kind of felt, as far as life goes, while we do live life, that I I kind of looked at it as almost in like a calculus type sense of just how, if life and if time did move on in a linear fashion, which I don't really know if today's science would agree with that. So I don't think it does. But just for conversation's sake, let's say it did move in a linear fashion. As you progress through time, if say we're moving along the y-axis, if you will, and of a Cartesian plane, and the more you move up the y-axis, that's, say, the progression of time, and to the positive side of that line, that function, that's just progress through time. I used to feel as if life was a a function that kind of swayed back and forth between fate and free will, where ultimately at the end of your life, a little bit more of it would be comprised of fate. And I've been reading a lot. Well, interestingly enough, in your podcast with Steve, he seemed very he seemed to have a lot of conviction in the idea of free will, which I thought was very interesting, because if you're looking at these massive celestial bodies that are way bigger, I mean, I don't even know if we can really conceive the size of Jupiter, let alone the sun. And they kind of have
Yeah.
they have their movements through space, or through space time, and everything, and they have these their poles and their everything, and they, like I was saying to you in that conversation in March, I feel like the proximity of objects, of matter, it has an effect on us as people. I was thinking, if we were to huddle, face to face, 2 inches between our faces, having a conversation, it would feel, I don't want to say wrong, it would feel off. You'd feel very as if you had to move and just get to a better, comfortable distance. And I feel when it comes to the celestial bodies that they have that influence. And as far as astrology goes, I mean, I believe they've kind of been studying the positioning of the celestial bodies, and in relation to human behavior, for thousands of years at this point, and it's something that just hasn't gone away. So with that said, it's my mind is like, well, there has to be some weight then to this, you know study, science, whatever you want to call it. What is it actually? What is astrology? Is that considered a science?
That's a good question. I don't think it's recognized as a science. I think it's like a pseudoscience. I think it would be considered as yeah, I think it would be considered a pseudoscience. Although if you talk to people that practice it, they say that it would be like a science. I mean, that's what Steve really highlights, and I don't know, the way that he explained it to me makes it seem like it's more of a science, because there's a lot of math that goes involved. There's a lot of geology, not geology, but
Geometry.
geometry. Thank you.
Yeah.
Geometry that's involved with it, and like study. I mean, astronomy is a science, right?
Yes. Yeah. Astronomy is
Astrology,
definitely a science.
yeah, and astrology is just seeing how the planets have their effects on us. Which, like, the way that I understood it is like, so they have effects on us, but they don't really necessarily dictate what we do. It's just really how we feel. So like, it was a lot of times I watch Steve's videos when he does like, because I'm a Gemini, so I watch his videos on like for the month of June, like Gemini's reading for the month of June, and he talks about how, okay, like maybe if you're starting something big because X planet is going to be here and da da da, you may want to hold off on doing that. Actually, even releasing the episode, he was like, I was going to release it one Sunday, and then he's like, no, let's wait to the next Sunday because this thing is going to be in retrograde. You're not going to want to do it at this point because like things are going to be wonky. So do it then. So,
And that's what's interesting. Like he, not that I want to argue. Like I'd love to just talk to him because when you think about it, it's like, well, where's the free will in that? If I guess your free will is in that choice to wait, but it's like if free will was a true very strong thing, you would have just posted it that day. You know what I mean?
That's true. I think, yeah, I think I understand what you're saying, because it's like you don't have free will. The planets have told you now to do it on this day, so you're listening to the planet. So do you have free will? Your free will would be to flip the bird to what the planets are saying and do what you want. But that's when because I feel like the planets and the way that they interact with you are supposed to guide what you do. So like if you want to start a business or if you want to pursue a love interest, maybe you want to wait because with the planets being here, you're going to be feeling this way. You're going to be acting this way. So it may be better to hold off. But I understand what you're saying is like, but the idea is like we have absolute free will because you can do what you want, but they definitely help guide you in the right path. But I guess that's a really gray area. I guess that is like a pretty thin line then.
Right, and that's why, like I said, and even still, because it's very new, even just as of yesterday, I was just doing some reading about astrology and my personal, chart interpretation, as they say, and it was the first time in an interpretation where it really, I think multiple times, it was like 30 pages long, and it was multiple times brought up the idea of, free will and just how that is a very predominant aspect of our human existence. And I want to delve more into it, like I said, because over the last few years, and even still right now, I mean, I always leaned a little bit more towards the idea of fate, and that, because when you consider, the galaxy and just the universe and how things move around and how mass, just changes, and, you have stars just, growing and just then turning into supernovas and exploding, and then these black holes. And, to me, there seems to be this, it seems as if it's never fully balanced. Like, say, like, the idea of the yin yang type thing. I don't, the reason that time, progresses, and I'm starting to think about this episode I was watching. Actually, the last night we talked, there was something on Nat Geo was doing about the universe, and it was but anyways, I feel as if, because say, I don't know, we'll use the idea of the Big Bang and how, maybe everything was balanced before the Big Bang, it was in this singularity of everything which is now in the universe, and then whatever it was that set off that Big Bang, I feel like now it's just an ever constant attempt at balance. It's just like a swinging pendulum, and it's on average everything is balanced, but it never actually is, because there's always, and that's how I feel. I don't know, that to me, as time moves on and things change, I don't know, a breeze goes through a tree, it sways back and forth, even though the wind may only be going in one direction. It's there. I don't know. That's how I feel like the universe is. It's just an ever attempt at balance, and but with all of that moving, going on in the universe, and planets going around stars, and stars circling around the centers of galaxies and everything. It's just, I feel as there's that. To me, it was just, it seemed so much of a grand design that there had to be a plan to it, or at least like a blueprint, a step by step thing, and that just, it seems that way, because then there's the whole. How does it relate into the whole Fibonacci sequence and that stuff? They say that that's kind of how.
Yeah.
Or recently, actually, I read about the geometric construction of the universe, that the Fibonacci sequence is like the root of it, kind of, and that's kind of how the the universe develops, be it moving outward or inward. That's kind of, and yeah, watching that thing on the universe, I had just a crazy thought of, how, did you ever do a thing in science class in school where you have like big rocks, and then smaller pebbles, and then sand, and you put it in a beaker, or just a container, and it just shows how the sand falls to the bottom. If you shake it a little bit, give some movement to it, the sand will fall to the bottom, and the bigger pebbles, they'll be in the middle, and then the bigger rocks will settle on top, just because, and everything then just fills in the space and whatnot.
Yeah.
So then it was like, well, if you kept putting more weight on top of it, eventually those fine grains of sand, they might break up even further. And then it's kind of the idea of the Fibonacci sequence. It's like, well, as it gets smaller and smaller and smaller, what would kind of happen? And I think, it would, I don't know, I think it would eventually compress into, to being a very hard, bigger stone. So it's almost like it on its own, it just almost restarts the cycle type thing. I mean, that's how, diamonds are created, just through, large amounts of pressure. Exactly. So it's just like this idea of how it kind of jives with that Fibonacci sequence. If you follow that spiral down to the middle, it's like, well, what's happening there? And science uses microscopes or telescopes, or to see what we can't see with the eye. And eventually, it's like, at some point, it's almost as if the cycle just restarts itself, and there's this, which, I don't know, goes through time. I'm just kind of rambling now, but.
No, I understand what you're saying. I think that a lot of people that would be atheists, I feel like some people see the Fibonacci sequence, they see the way that everything's kind of working out. Yeah, there's still a lot of chaos in the universe, but there's been a lot of order brought from the chaos of the Big Bang and everything. And
right. It seems chaotic, but I feel I really feel that it is, controlled chaos. But that it's also because I think it's a matter of perspective. If a human being is watching, a supernova explode, it's going to seem just, otherworldly and just so massive. But at the same time, in a universal sense, it's like, I don't know, I don't know why this analogy popped in my head, but like popping a zit or something. It's like, and it's just a release of something that, you know, the pressure built up, and it's not necessarily supposed to be that way in that state, and then it goes, you know. So it's like, it seems chaotic to us, but I think in the universal sense, it's just a part of the equation, a very necessary part.
Yeah, yeah. But the point that I'm trying to make is that people will see that a creator put order to this and how everything works out perfectly and everything's great. Um, and like I mean, there was this video a while back about how, how the percentages of gases in the atmosphere are so perfect for life to have evolved, and da da da, and for us to be here, and like all these crazy calculations. And it's like, but at the same time, we it doesn't. I talked to one atheist at one point, and he was saying that, like, well, we wouldn't know if it wasn't perfect. It's just this is what happened. It just all fell into place and it ended up being perfect. Yeah, the percentage of it is very small, but we're talking billions and billions of years, and the things in the universe change. I mean, how old is the universe? We had that discussion before. It's like
Thirteen
I
point
mean,
eight billion.
yeah, 13.8 billion years. So it's like that's a lot of time to get it right, and a lot of chances that it had, and a lot of, I don't know how many planets are out there that aren't able to sustain life, but we found one that we were able to we were able to sustain life here, and then we were able, through our mind, to be able to see the science and the math behind how all this works. So it's like, um so lots of people think that it's just, a random event, and yes, the probability of that is very small, but it's not an impossibility.
Right, and also I think, like, modern, I don't know if it's modern physics, but there's you know, the theory that because the universe is so massive and expansive, that the, they say, you know, they say it was, I was listening to the Joe Rogan podcast. I forget how he worded it, but it was something about how there's people that say, you know, anything can happen an infinite amount of times. So, like, if you dream anything you could think of, like, it's probably happened somewhere on some plane. You know, it's just that crazy idea where I don't even know if I want to
Yeah,
go
it is.
down that
It's
road of, you know.
we still have to get to the afterlife at some point today, but
Right. Which I was gonna say, we can, yeah, make that segue now. For I forget. I don't even know why I started talking about what I did.
no, it's fine. It's fine. I love tangents. I love rambling. This is great. I think this is like what these kinds of discussions are going to be like, and that's totally fine with me. I love it. Um, but I was going to ask you one question before we transition into the afterlife. The idea of fate. Do you believe that do you believe that there is, like, nobody actually has free will? I mean, every religion. I mean, let's take Christianity, for example, just because I have, so much experience with it. Like, you're supposed to be living your life when you become a Christian. You're supposed to live your life in the way that the Holy Spirit, which is supposed to be God in you, directs you. So you don't even have fully free will. You have the one free will choice of becoming a Christian or not. And now maybe astrology is the same, where the planets dictate how you feel and the decisions you're going to make. But also, let's just say you're a non-religious person. Well, what dictates the decisions you make? Well, finances, or life goals, or life choices, or your job, or something. Like,
Well, finances. That stuff to me is so. I'd hate to say trivial, but, like, finances. That's
but people believe, like, people like build their lives around making money, and it's not trivial for a lot of people. You may find it trivial, but I find it trivial too.
and you know, have at it type thing. Which, you know, I mean, and there is something to be said. Part of me feels as if I'm entering, like, a new phase in my life when it comes to my outlook on that stuff. Because, you know, in the last few years, I really kind of adopted, as much as I could, you know, a minimalist type approach. I found a lot of, I found a lot of, I don't know. I don't know if I don't know if I want to say peace or comfort in that, just really not having much. I mean, the more I found that the more I got rid of, I felt better. Less tied to stuff and more. It just gave me more, freedom of my mind. To just explore new because it wasn't occupied with whatever thing that was around me or on my mind. Uh,
I think the pursuit of like material things and the amounting of material things is one of the most pointless tasks that you can put on yourself in life. That's me personally, though. I find there to be really no value in
yeah, no, I
accumulating and trying to
agree.
get a lot of
I
things.
agree.
Like I just don't see any value in it. That's me personally. That's me personally, of course. I know people. I mean, hell, we're doing a podcast right now. I'm using a mic. I'm using a computer. I like gadgets. I like using things, of course, but like the having your life dedicated to collection of money and then the collection of stuff just it seems meaningless to me. I mean, for me.
Well, I think it's a very new thing. This whole. I hate to say the word and get into that, but the whole kind of capitalist, pursue wealth and possessions. It's really kind of
Like the
new. I
baby boomer
feel.
generation kind of brought
Uh,
it up, like after World War II, kind
um.
of, why not,
Well,
like
no. I mean,
50s maybe.
I think I kind of look at America. I kind of look at America like that, because although maybe it wasn't different. America was just kind of, before America, it was, the kings and queens, the monarchs, kind of shoveling, yeah, shoveling everything their way, and they would use sometimes the idea of God. I was divinely appointed, and so it has to come to me, this and that, and then, America was the first, I think, time where it was like, hey, why don't I have a chance at that? Are we really any different? And I think that's going to get old too, because I mean, I personally feel, it may keep progressing in the direction it has, but it doesn't make sense. I don't feel like the idea of, interest and just creating quote unquote wealth out of nothing really. I mean, there's no balance to it. I mean, at one point, the dollar was based off of, gold. And I believe it was 1973 where that went out the window. And it's like, so it's just this man-made thing that people, they give and take just kind of based on what people think it's worth. It's all just like an idea. It's nothing concrete. There's no universal substance to it. Which is why lately, like I said, my view has changed. It's like, well, if I'm living life in this time period, maybe just, make a game out of it, if you will. I mean, what's really something is when people are so, it really can affect people in a very emotional way, not having it, or having too much, because really, I mean, the thought of having too much too, or a lot of it, I feel like there would come a lot of pressure with that. Maybe that's just how I would approach it, but.
But anyway, free will. Like, do you think that anybody has free will? Let's get it back to topic. Yes, I mean we're not going to get into capitalism and everything. We get having a whole.
Right, okay, yeah, I'm glad you did that, yeah, no, and I don't want to do that. No, free will, like, I feel like because I've read stuff with the idea of free will. It's like people think they have it. Like for some reason, we do. I'm lifting my hand up right now. I mean, we're led to believe we have it, and I still don't know, and I don't know if I will never know if it's free will or fate. But I've read stuff where it's the natural. What do they call them? Not instincts, but our natural needs dictate how we go about life. And we are all individuals, so we're made up differently. Ultimately, we're the same thing, but and that's my outlook on humans. We're all the same. I mean, no human is better or worse than the other. It's just that we have so many components to us, and I believe everybody has a different equational makeup, if you will, where all those components just come in different amounts in each individual. But we have these natural drives, for hunger or for breathing, drinking. Then there's the whole sexuality side and reproduction, and they say that even though you think that you're making these choices, it's it's really just that stuff that's kind of dictating, your way through life, if you will. So, like I said, I mean, up for the last few years, up to this point, I've been more a proponent of fate, and just now I'm stumbling into these either hearing people or reading stuff, which is for the free will side of things. So I'm not going to cast it away. I'm actually going to delve into it. I'm going to read into it more and kind of experiment more with it, in my life, and see if my view changes at all in regards to fate or free will. Exciting stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, yeah, definitely exciting. Do you feel that if you came after kind of reading through things, if you feel that you lean more towards life is just kind of fate, and you're just kind of on this track, does that still leaves you excited for life, excited to wake up every morning, excited to see what I guess you can see what life has to offer and stuff, even though you maybe yeah.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah, yes, it is. I mean, because, and again, I used to feel as if, um, I used to feel, I just actually through growing up, going to church, and just my view used to be that it was this one life experience which we're given. Um, I kind of very recently, just through hearing things, reading things again, the idea of incarnation has really kind of entered my mind, and I haven't pushed it away, and it's still bouncing around. I'm exploring that idea more and more. But so, be it whether there's reincarnation or not, it's still just, I don't. Hmm. I don't know if there is reincarnation. I don't know, how often. I don't know what the cycle period is, where you would, where the soul would be reincarnated into another human, another life, and have another, span of time, be it whatever, 70, 80, 90 years. I don't know what the cycle is, how long that is. But yeah, even if it is fate, yeah, it's still exciting because you get to see what it is you were meant to be. Um, and I, you know, so if it is fate, then it's very exciting to see what it is you're meant to be. And I think, I don't know if I was talking about it last time. Like, there's a part of me that feels I will accomplish certain things. I don't know. I couldn't lay out every detail and how it's going to happen. And uh, I found that, yeah, we were talking about, in the 20s, how the ego tries to force it in the way you see it, in the way the ego sees it. There's going to be a lot of suffering in that. Whereas if you kind of, I use the analogy of surfing, to where if you find that spot on the wave of life, if you will, as space time kind of, as we move along it, if you find that spot where you just kind of catch the momentum, and life, as opposed to you fighting to get into it and fighting your way through it, if you just find that right spot, and I think you kind of find it through letting go, like I said, of the ego, and it that just kind of propels you along the path, so uh, does the path change? I don't know, and I think that's just that's just where I'm at in my life at this point. But yeah, so it's still exciting, even if it is already planned out and part of a grand design. It's how could your curiosity not make you excited about it? Just to see what's going to come. I
Yeah,
mean,
for sure. Yeah, no,
and
definitely. I can see that. Definitely. I was just curious what you thought, but we can move on now officially to the
okay, yeah,
to the
Afterlife.
to the afterlife. Yeah, it's almost like I don't know. Maybe we can talk so long about like one topic or just like kind of. I mean, we're going on tangents right now, so
A little bit.
a little bit, but yeah. Yeah. So the afterlife. Now, the idea of reincarnation, everything. I guess that's a component of the afterlife, but it was with even with reincarnation, it's not a continuous cycle.
Well, reincarnation would be like just the start of a new life
Yeah,
in
but
a
I feel
way.
like
I feel
with
like.
you know cultures that believe in reincarnation, it's working towards a final goal of hitting nirvana. So there is an afterlife, but reincarnation is like a bad cycle, and that's kind of what Hinduism has, that kind of idea until you figure out your dharma, and then that propels you to
Mm,
nirvana, to the afterlife, and that's kind of your job here on earth, is to figure out why you're here. And then if you don't discover it, you get another shot. You get another shot until you can finally figure it out. And then
that could make
you
sense.
hit,
Yeah,
yeah, and
I
then you
like the
hit
idea of that.
then you reach nirvana. I don't know. I kind of like I don't know. Yeah, I've spoken before how I'm drawn to Hinduism and a lot of what Hinduism has to
And
say.
I still have to check out that podcast for sure.
Well, I'm gonna definitely have more Hindus on to just to talk things out. But I feel like out of all the people that I've spoken to, like Hinduism seems to be one of the ones that I resonate with the most.
Right, right.
I mean, that's a discussion for another time. But right now, so what's your ideas of what's your personal after doing research and kind of through life experiences, where are you at right now with your idea of the afterlife? Because honestly, I have things like I said, like reincarnation. I like the story of people that like recognize past lives and everything. I think that those stories are really interesting and kind of creepy, and kind of I don't know. I enjoy spending time on the YouTube while watching through videos and everything. Um, but but yeah, I don't know. That seems to me to make a lot of sense. I don't know, but I don't know. What do you think? I mean, once again, I'm at a point where I don't really have any concrete things. I'm still like floating around, grasping at things.
Well, in a way, yeah, in a way, that's kind of my outlook. Is that I don't know. I mean, you don't know. I'm convinced that there is something. Uh, and we were talking about the last time we spoke. I mean, a lot of what my beliefs are based on is the science. Well, the what it's a present scientific fact. And like I said, I definitely kind of, well, if it changes, it changes. But science lays forth the idea that energy cannot be created nor destroyed. So a lot of my beliefs and thoughts is based on that. That kind of serves as the cornerstone of how I feel with things. Because if yes, your mind, like when you die, your body is going to, whether you burn it or bury it, it's just it's going to decompose. But that energy, say you bury a body, it's going to decompose, but it's then going to feed. It's going to feed other forms of life. So there's that transfer of energy. When it comes to the mind, um,
Yeah, what is
that's
consciousness? I
that
mean,
that's what I'm not right, and that's what I'm not sure of with the afterlife. I don't know. I don't, and part of me doesn't think that you would have the same mental approach to existence. I could be wrong, maybe but I think it's gonna. I think it at least transforms. I to and maybe it transforms through, I don't know, because then you have the spirit, you have the soul, and I feel that just kind of, where the soul, this, your soul, your spirit is within your body when you live this life.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the energy, or of the soul, that life force, when you die.
Is that related to consciousness too, or those?
uh it's no, I feel.
Was then, I mean, I'm a big proponent of animal rights and everything, and I would say that they're sentient beings. They have a consciousness. They are able to think.
It's funny you bring that, because I wanted to ask. I actually, that was one of my things that I wrote down, was to talk about your vegetarianism. Yeah, did you know though? Like, did you know? Um, and it's obviously just putting a twist on it, but with words. But you know how when you cut grass, you smell that smell of cut grass.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, when you cut grass, it lets off this bit of air, which has that smell to it. But also, if you were to this, I heard this recently, and it made me think of just vegetarianism. If you were to get really close, that release of air could actually, if you're close enough, sound like a scream, if you will. So I feel like, because I did I definitely, I went into vegetarianism for, I think it was over a year, um, which was great. I learned a lot about food and diet through it, for sure. But I feel anything that you consume to a degree is going to be a sentient being, and that's, I think the key to it is gratitude. I think as long as you're as grateful eating a salad as you are, say, a piece of fish or something. Because really, ever since doing the vegetarian diet, it forever changed the amount of meat I eat and consume. I don't think you need much of it. Um, but regardless, going back to it, I feel as long as you have that gratitude, and which I feel like that. I feel like it's coming back. I think it definitely kind of left us for a little while. Maybe that's because I'm basing that on my life. But I feel like some people just endlessly put food in their mouth, you know, for just the wrong reasons. It's a fuel, and that's really how it should be looked at. It's just it's fuel that keeps you going. It's not a pleasure. It's not a make you feel emotionally better. It's none of that. It's simply to feed your body and to nourish it and give you more fuel to keep moving. And I found that, I think people would be surprised with how little they actually need. And just, again, the whole, not to go back to the capitalist thing, but, you just tweak food here and there, and it's just more and more ways to make a buck. So, I think it's really gotten out of hand when it comes to you know food. But yeah, I just wanted to bring up that point of how grass screams when you cut it. So any leaf you chew on, and any vegetable or fruit that you eat is somehow being destroyed.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we have to kill something to eat it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a reality.
Right.
I'm trying to see where, because I know that the smell that you're smelling is definitely a response. It's a chemical response. It's a distress call. Actually, they did an experiment where they infested an oak tree with tons of caterpillars. I can't remember what kind of caterpillar, but then they kept one free of caterpillars. And what happened was, the one that was being decimated by the caterpillars, it was releasing chemicals in the air, and then that other plant was picking up those chemicals through their stomatas, and then with the plant that was free of insects, it started producing higher quantities of tannins. Those are like really bitter bitter
Right, which would turn. No kidding.
could turn the caterpillars off, or yeah, so that
Right.
the plant would protect itself. So I mean, there is like a bizarre communication the way that plants are, but is that a just a basic kind of chemical? I mean, plants are wild. I mean, they are. I mean, we don't know as much as
No,
we could
no,
possibly
there's
know,
such.
and
Yeah.
maybe we're able to relate to animals, or the feeling of animals going through pain and suffering is more visceral to us, because we're able to actually, we don't have to get close to an animal to hear it scream, or to look into its eyes and see fear and see a response of something that
Right.
we can relate to. Whereas I don't know, you're right, maybe plants are feeling pain, but because it can't communicate to us through body language, we can't recognize it as a way of it communicating. Just because we have a very limited way that we're able. I mean, we're able to communicate in complex ways by language, of course. But animals communicate through body language and the way that they respond, and it.
Right. And actually, I mean, I would argue that language is very limiting, and we yes, it's very good, and we have at this point a very extensive vocabulary, but it's very limiting. I almost have faith in the idea that say with trees or plants communicating, that it's way more efficient, and I guess I'll just leave it at that. Way more efficient than humans vocalizing their thoughts. It's um, because there is so much going on between say plants, that I feel as if they're actually ahead of the game when it comes to and it's the idea, and being connected. It's the interconnectivity, like they say with tsunamis and everything. How in 2004, that tsunami in India, I believe it was. Uh, there was hardly any animals that which were there and were affected by it, because they're in tune with everything, and they knew it was coming. And it was just a bunch of humans at resorts and people who were we really, I feel like we're at a point in history where obviously we're approaching, or we surpassed 7 billion people, and I don't think I think we put a little too much into the idea that we're the bee's knees. I think it's just that's just the point we're at, and I don't think we're any better or worse than any other living creature being. We just happen to get to this point in time of massive exponential reproduction, and uh, for what reason, I don't know. I feel as if it's to expand our consciousness. We have the biggest brains, in proportion to body size, I believe, out of any other living creature. But I really think that's our purpose, and I hope as if that's the kind of turn we take to realize that the whole pursuit of money, it's just you're in a hamster wheel. There's no real progression there. You get more and more and more. It's I don't to me there's no substance in that. I think really, if we were to explore our consciousness and the extents to which it can go, that I feel is where you could gain more and more, I don't know, value, or just that's I feel as if we should be exploring, which we do to some extent, but I feel as if I feel as if there could be a much more deeper collective consciousness. Uh, I feel there's a lot of just kind of separation and segregation between people, just because of how we yes, we are individuals, but I think if we linked up our consciousnesses in plural, uh, I think we could. I think something way bigger and way more substantial and valuable would be created, or maybe it's there, but it's vibrating at a very low frequency. Where I think if you combined consciousness and really explored it and tried to fuse it, you could raise it to, just a higher frequency where our understanding would grow, and we could be even smarter than we are now, and just, yeah, and have a better understanding of kind of, the universe and what makes us and where we come from, and all that stuff.
Mhm.
um,
Yeah, sorry.
but
I'm just reading. I'm reading an article about plants potentially feeling pain, and it's really fascinating.
right, and
Because
that's why, because I
yeah.
did I have since, started eating some, very, very nothing what I used to growing up, but a little bit of meat. And my thing is, there's even still times where it was like, I know I ate too much. I didn't need to eat that much. I really need to just rein it in. And it's just old habits based on just, whatever it is, how you grew up, and just how you ate. But it's um, I think like I said, it really just comes down to gratitude. I think as long as you're grateful for the energy you're receiving, it doesn't matter what form it comes in. And obviously, there's better forms for your body than others.
Yeah,
But
I just think like factory farming and such is definitely a crime. I think that needs, I
oh
think that
yeah,
that's
for sure,
I
for
think that
sure.
stuff like that is a crime. But I agree that the idea is like I don't
And that
know,
stuff that stuff is not good for you. Like, I know
oh
out in
no.
California, I drove. I think it was on Interstate 5, or the 5, as they would say out in California, because it's, the only 5 there is. But there was, I mean, it had to be. It felt like it was over a mile for sure. I want to say it felt as if it was a 3 to 5 mile stretch, and I was amazed that they had it right on the interstate. Of It was nothing but cows, and it wasn't green pastures. It did not compare to like the cows and cattle I saw out in, say, Montana. Um,
Or North Carolina, even like driving through North Carolina, you see them on the
right. No,
hills
this
and
was
green
not that at
pastures.
all.
Yeah.
This was cows just as far as your eye could see, and the most distinct thing about it was the smell. And there was an odor that just, it was, you can't describe, you can't describe it. It was something I'd never smelled before, and you just knew that this is where, most likely your McDonald's, your Wendy's, your Taco Bell meat is coming from. And it was like, I don't, and I hadn't touched that stuff in years, and I was like, I even more so don't want to at this point, because it was, if this is where the meat is coming, this is not good for you. It was just a smell that just your body, it was repulsive. And it's like, I would never want to put this in my body. And a lot of hunters and stuff, they would agree, and they would say, if it's way different if you go out into, nature and harvest an animal who has lived a robust life, and they've eaten, obviously they live their life searching for the best food they can get. So it's the idea of kind of refining energy and having it be as good of an energy source as possible. And yeah, I don't want any part to do with those cows that are just crammed together, or chickens, whatever it may be.
Hmm. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely not. But going back to like the idea of consciousness being related to a soul, and
Yes,
just
yes.
like it's fascinating. Yeah, it's. I want to move away from this human centric view of the world. Like we're number one for some reason. The way that we perceive reality is above all other forms of perceiving reality, and somehow we're so much better. I want to move
No,
away from that.
I feel that's so off.
Yeah, yeah, oh yeah. I think it's totally off, and I don't know if plants feel pain because like obviously they don't have a brain like ours to process whatever they're feeling. So I don't know if it's a chemical response. I have no idea, but I don't necessarily believe that a soul is because I believe in a life force for sure, and I don't think that it's in relation to consciousness, and I certainly don't think it's just exclusive for humans either, because I don't know. I actually for like a afternoon I kind of went down this path, and we can discuss this. But it's like Homo sapiens weren't the only humans in existence. So like when did we if humans are creatures that have souls, well when did we have souls? Did Neanderthals have souls? Did, all the Homo erectus, Homo whatever the other ones? It's like I don't know when a soul was if according to I don't know, a lot of faith beliefs that think that we have
Well,
souls,
I feel
you
like
know.
I think I feel like that soul part is the piece of God in you. It's that piece of the universe, that ethereal web, which is or thread, which is woven through everything, but everything's woven of that thread type thing, and that's what I feel like it is. Yeah, because I mean, because they say you have your mind, body, and spirit. So yeah, the consciousness, the mind, I think is a separate entity from the spirit, and also
And that exists in all and anything that's living, and maybe I mean some people would even go as far as to say even things like rocks and things that may not be living.
oh yeah.
So
Yeah, because remember I told you about that experiment. I saw a documentary where
remind me on it. Yeah, yeah. I believe it's ringing a bell, but just yeah.
yeah a person, it was a guy, yeah, he was like pursuing or happiness, whatever, just long story short, there was a scientist, if you will, but he hooked up electrodes to this person, and he ran cables, to carry the electricity, because we have electricity in our bodies. It's our neurons are firing off and everything, so we have this electric current which goes through us. I mean, we're surrounded by electricity, and that just the electromagnetic field. It's We're surrounded by it, and it's also in us. It's one of those, and you should actually probably learn about, or yeah, and look into it in your astronomy class. That's where I really got a good understanding of it. Uh, but so he hooked up these, I don't know the real terms, but electrodes, if you will, to this person, and he ran the wires into a petri dish of yogurt, and then he ran a voltage meter, and he took the prongs of the voltage meter and just put it in the yogurt. So it wasn't the meter wasn't hooked up directly to the person. It was through the yogurt. So the the scientist, whatever, the person conducting it said, okay, I want you to just to kind of sit there, and we'll have this, pleasant conversation. And they watched the needle on the voltage meter. It didn't do too much. It was kind of hovering, whatever. And then he said, okay, I want you to think. And the person who was hooked up to the yogurt, sounds funny, he was a director. He actually directed Dumb and Dumber, and he directed a couple other pretty big movies. Like, he was a successful Hollywood director who he had this. Yeah, definitely, and he made a solid paycheck from it. But he had a mountain bike accident, and he was in the hospital for like 2 months, and he just started, I guess, to think a lot about life and the purpose of life and happiness, what all this stuff, and because he even through his movies, like I said, he made a ton of money. He bought this. Uh, I think it might have been a ranch, but some estate in California. And he talked about the moment where he walked into the front door, once he had bought it. And he's like, I'm in this massive vestibule, of this massive estate. And he's like, I was expecting to feel something, from that, and knowing that I owned it and this and that. And he's like, I honestly felt nothing. And I think it was after that he had the accident, and he started, this pursuit of just what is life and what's the purpose and all this stuff. But so he made this documentary. So anyways, so he's sitting hooked up to this yogurt, and the voltage meter is pretty much staying at its, mark, and it's not really experiencing too much activity. And then the person conducting the little experiment was saying, okay, now what I want you to do is I want you to think of thoughts you used to have, which used to really work you up, just really throw you off balance, and just affect you in what you would think is this kind of negative way. So the director, he's like, all right, he's like, well, pretty much he would think about his like lawyers and these legal situations having to go through, making a big movie, whatever, and all of a sudden the needle started jumping all over the place. I mean, because it was working up this person and their mind, and it was which causes them to fire off these electronic signals, if you will. And it just kind of showed that whether you realize it or not, you're affecting this yogurt, and what you would have thought was this inanimate object, this lifeless object, is clearly susceptible to your state, if you will. So I mean, and that was another thing actually watching it that just kind of reinforced the whole idea of that, you know, uh, that energy that which penetrates everything. Everything is comprised of this energy, this universal web, or building blocks. The atoms. How we discussed in the last podcast. Um, Going back to the mind and spirit and stuff, the spirit is that life force, and up to now I kind of have felt that the spirit is kind of the result of the mind body connection. I think that's also something that it's because we're so limited with our senses and everything. It's just the idea that spirit, that it's just something that we'll never know and fully understand. I feel that, like I was saying a little bit earlier, I feel like we could increase our understanding of it. But I don't know if we'll ever be fully aware of what's really going on, at least considering how we live our lives now and where we stand at this point in history. I mean, I think there might have been some ancient civilizations. Your sister comes to mind now talking about it, because through her I've delved into, Graham Hancock and all that stuff, and just reading about, Göbekli Tepe. I feel like, I don't even think we know, I don't think we have a true grasp of history when it comes to, 4,000 years ago, the time of the pyramids. And even, I mean, there's that excavation site in Turkey, which they have found, which dates back to, I think it was 12,000 years ago. So around 10,000 BC or something. So I don't think we just don't have a grasp of history. Anything that we've been taught, I'm not saying that it's false, but it's just lacking. It's not all encompassing. So, you have the mind body, which I feel like as long as you have a healthy balance of working on each of them, that your spirit is in, a healthy state, a good condition. As if you exercise, you eat well, there's no, I think anybody could relate that you feel better, and as opposed to when you just eat terrible food and you just sit around doing nothing. You don't feel as vibrant, you don't feel as well. And same thing with your mind. If you're just kind of passively going through your days unengaged and not learning and not applying, and this is one thing I wrote down. Like, I kind of realized it about myself. I don't know what other people's perceptions are of me, but I tend to go through my life like doing this cycle of observing, analyzing, and then reflecting. And I think everybody does it to a degree. I feel as if I had to put a percentage on it, I feel like that's like probably at least 70% of my time, in my life, that I spend doing that stuff. And then there's also, engaging in life. And some people are just, they're firing on all cylinders. They seem to just be engaging, all the time. Whereas, I don't. believe it or not, I can be quiet and not talkative, and I feel like that's how I am most of the time. Probably, like I said, I would put it at around 70, but and yeah, and if you're not, so everybody's different in that regard, but if you're not engaging your mind, again, you're going to kind of deplete yourself, and you're going to start, vibrating at a lower frequency, if you will. So I think if you engage your body and your mind in a healthy way, and equally, and just keep at it, I feel that's what feeds the spirit, which is something that, yeah, like, I actually kind of want to just, not right now, but after this podcast, just put some time and thought into that, the link of where the spirit comes into play, and to go back. Right. That's exactly what I was, right. That's exactly where I was just going to go with it. Whereas my outlook on the afterlife is, you really don't know. I'm convinced that it there's something, because of the fact that, like I said, energy cannot be created nor destroyed. So it has to pass into something. And I feel as if it is like a different plane, a much, much higher frequency, which almost penetrates everything. I kind of feel as if you it because it's now freed of your mind and body. I feel like the mind and body, in a way, is almost, to take the darker side, a prison for the spirit. The lighter side would be a vessel. You have your mind and body. It's a vessel for your spirit to go through life. But in a way, it's also very constricting for the spirit. And I feel once your body and mind are, just, I don't want to say expelled, but let go of, in this form of human life, the spirit can then kind of, almost like a, supernova, just explode, and reconnect with the universe, and the everything. And it's almost like, that light, light of a dying star. I mean, it goes for an incredible amount of time through over a vast distance. I mean, the light we see from stars is so old. That's such a very interesting concept that, again, learned in astronomy. It's like what you see in the night sky, all that light. It's so old. It's not in real time. You're not seeing the light of the present moment. You're seeing light of thousands of years ago, millions of years ago. Sometimes which is a crazy thought to think, but. So yeah, when you die, I feel as if that spirit, you're kind of re-released out into the universe, almost to like recharge that battery, that the spirit's battery, the life force battery. And then, whether you are going to be reincarnated or not, you go through that recharge process, and then I've heard, who was I talking to, or read something where the soul actually, from what I've heard, kind of choose. This contradicts what I was saying in the last podcast of how, kids don't choose the environment they're brought up in, but supposedly I've heard things of where, like, the soul it knows the life that it's going to live. And that's why, that idea of fate resonates with me. And that, like, and I think I said it in the last podcast, where I feel as if, my life and its plans, its blueprints, and its everything, I feel as if it's like kind of, not to sound overly poetic, but stamped on my heart. And I don't know every single word and every single letter and bullet point of those plans. I couldn't articulate it out, and I think that's, again, just part of the human experience. But yeah, I have heard or read. It might have even been through the woman who you're going to be talking to, where you said you kind of, you know what your life is going to be. You choose where to inject yourself, as far as your parents, and the soul kind of enters. It finds its opening, and takes it, and then bam, like, then you're conceived, and and then you go about living life, and then, yeah, and then, like, so the afterlife, like I said, is that the spirit is being freed from the vessel of the mind and body, and I feel like it just you get to where you're fully connected with the universe again, and you're not just you're not an individual. You don't even have the idea of that anymore. You're just the concept. Yeah, exactly. And the concept of the whole and God is like, that's the moment where, like, bam, you're reconnected. You're plugged back in a sort of way.
So okay, so we've been recording now for an hour and 13 minutes, right? And so I'm about to say something that may just like, I don't know, maybe just like totally void out everything that this past hour and 13 minutes, not void it out, but you'll understand what I mean in a second.
I'm gonna say, just go ahead and say it.
So well, what I'm going to say is that I think that whatever happens, as long as someone believes that there's something on the, like, after this, because I talked to an atheist that she said that she believed in the lights out church, as in, like, when you die it's just done, lights out, darkness, no consciousness, nothing, and done. So, like, okay, so besides that, the idea that people think that, so anybody that believes that there's something after this, you said that 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 language is very limiting. It limits us in many ways to explain and even be able to rationalize and comprehend certain things. Even if we're able to comprehend certain things and understand certain things, we may not necessarily have the language to be able to communicate that effectively, so that other people can understand what we're talking about. So, do you think that the idea of not having an individual, like not having any identity, or being an individual, being one with everything, and this kind of being recharged and everything? I mean, you're using the words that you have available to you to try to describe this thing that you're thinking, but it's definitely going to be vastly different than any of us can ever perceive. So do you think it's almost a pointless endeavor for us to even have a discussion about the afterlife, and instead kind of live this life of, you need to be working on, like, your mind, body, and soul, having those things in harmony, and then just worry about that, and then just whatever happens on the other side, you get to the other side. But even and that's why I'm saying voiding out this discussion, kind of throwing this idea like, well, is this entirely pointless? This entire hour and 50-minute pointless discussion, which we're not going to be able to.
Well, no. I mean, it's not pointless. It's part of the human experience. That it's
Pointless is probably not. Yeah, pointless is maybe not the right word, but you know what I mean. Like, kind of like, yeah.
Oh, completely. No, I completely know what you mean, because and you have a very valid point. I don't think it's fully pointless, because that's part of the human experience, is the mystery of what does happen when you quote unquote die and pass and take your last breath. That's just part. I mean, and that's one of the things that, again, that's one of those components that every human has. No matter what you believe in, you're gonna think about it. Everybody does. I mean, and you develop your own stance on what it is that happens. But yes, the reason the conversation would somewhat be pointless is that you don't know. I don't think anybody knows, and even
if you did, we probably wouldn't even have the language to be able to explain it, and it would just be like way beyond us.
right. And even with people, and I haven't looked too much into it, but like you were talking about earlier, the people who have the near-death experiences, that might be the closest you could get to what happens. But at the same time, I don't think the person could articulate it, because I heard of it was through there was this person talking about this drug. I don't know. Have you ever heard of DMT?
Yeah, of course.
So I was actually, it was Joe Rogan. He was talking about it, and it's well, and that it's a drug that you can take, but it's also dimethyltryptamine. It's produced in your pituitary gland, and when you die, it's being stored in your pituitary gland for that moment of when you die, and it's released, and that whatever. So, but he was talking about one of his trips, I guess you call them, when he was on it, and he was talking about how you're in this place where there is no you, there's no words, there's no individual experience at that point. You entered this, you know, that I don't know what you would. I don't. Again, you don't know. You're entering this realm of everything that yet you don't know. So it's in that sense, yeah, it's pointless to have it because you don't know. Even and even in his experience, it's like there's no words. There's no, not even really like ideas. It's just the component and the components of the universe. Like they talk about the whole geometrical shapes and patterns that you see and everything. It kind of is, I guess, I don't know, like a reflection, just a reflection of how or it's just a reflection of the composition of the universe. Uh, so, but yeah, so yeah, it's kind of pointless, like you said, but it's also just kind of fun too because when you do talk about it, you can it kind of other people's angles and points of view, no matter what. I mean, well, I try to be as open as possible. So again, for me to be talking as much as I am, it's a little bit ridiculous because I just feel like, well, who are you to preach? But it's just like, well, I'm just sharing sharing the outlook. Whereas through conversations with people, anybody or everybody, they could give you something to where you kind of are always changing your perception of it. But again, the root of it for me is that there is something, and it's just kind of a plane, a higher plane, of, and if not the highest plane, the highest frequency where you reach, it's just like, again, all encompassing. You're just reconnected with everything.
Yeah, what's interesting talking about DMT. I have a buddy who did DMT a bunch of times, and he was saying that like one of the like first, I think maybe the first time that he did it, it's apparently like a shocking experience. Like apparently it's like it's like a rocket ship apparently. But he was like he was laying on his bed, and he said that he was like gripping onto life until he finally just like let go. And he said and then he just like let go, and he was just like in this void. And he's like, I don't know how to really explain it, but he's like, I was like, I'm gonna die. I don't want to. And then he's like, he said that he just said like, fuck it, and he just like let go, and he said that like after that it was like peace and like all this crazy experience. And I mean he saw a bunch of stuff that then related to some Aztec stuff, and it was like really fascinating. But yeah, it's just interesting how, and actually. On my list of discussion, we're not going to get to it because it's going to be like an hour and a half, and I think that's a good amount of time for an episode. But I was going to talk about hallucinogens and their role in experiencing experiencing spiritual events and everything. Because interesting enough, what was I just listening to? It was a podcast. I think it was actually a Bill Maher. I think it was the most recent Bill Maher episode that he was talking to someone who was talking about LSD and psilocybin, and he was saying how like when you do these things, you have an experience of killing your ego, and it's almost like restarting the brain where you begin to and maybe DMT's like that. Maybe it's like we're killing this idea of like us not only us humans being the center of the world, but we have this tendency to think that ourselves individually are something special and important, which like you said, we are something special and important, but we're also part of
all
this,
that in a bag of chips.
yeah. and we're still part of this universal network,
Right, and that's the significance of the person, I think, is the fact that you are a piece, and you're a very necessary piece. You're an integral, or is that the word? Integral, that's the word, integral part of the universe. And you're supposed to be there, but your main your significance comes into play in that idea that you're just this little part, like I said, that little cog of the grand machinery of it. and it's a beautiful, beautiful mechanism that's, which is the universe, to use another word. But now, if you think of a machine, like if you remove one little cog, the whole thing could be destroyed. So yes, we are significant, but it's not as an individual. It's the fact that you as an individual are a part of something way bigger than you, and that's, so yeah, and I think the more that you, work to diminish the ego, you realize, okay, I still, in this life form, this human experience, I still have this sense or this idea of being an individual, but it's it's really about the collective, and what could happen, if we look to enhance the collective and try to almost amplify the connectivity between us and all living things. I think that's, to me, I wish that would be, the goal of humanity, as opposed to, try to get a Lamborghini or something. I think, like, I just think so much cool stuff could happen. I feel like we've hardly even tapped into our capabilities as conscious beings.